Reflections from Torch Trust, focusing on Christian faith and sight loss.
Hello and welcome to Reflections, the show from Torch Trust that talks about faith and disability in today's world. I'm your host, Marilyn Baker, and I'm excited to be with you for the next half an hour. Today, we'll hear the first part of a story of how one man went from being an investment banker whose main worries revolved around cufflinks and car windows to starting an enterprise which helps disabled people get into work and start their own businesses. In 2006, Hardeep Rai had it all. He was an investment banker working for a very successful company in the city. To use his words, his biggest worries evolved around which cufflinks to wear or whether or not he should black out his car windows. He was enjoying his life very much. Then his son Eshan was born, which started off an entirely new direction in Hardeep's life. Lynn Davies sat down to talk to Hardeep about his fascinating journey.
Can you tell us a little bit about who you are today?
Sure. Well, I'm a mid-50s parent of a young boy called Eshan. His name is Eshan, and he's 18 years old. I say myself as a parent because actually that's one of the things I pride myself on, Lynn, is being a parent. And as we'll sort of talk about a little bit more, Eshan is a severely disabled child. So he's really opened my eyes up to a world that I didn't really know existed. So I'm a parent on the one hand. I'm a husband on another hand. I got married back in 2024, so only less than a year ago.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. And then as a professional, I'm sort of an ex-city financier. So I've been in investment banking in the world of financial services for about 30 years. Goodness, it's scary hearing that figure, but about 30 years. And for the last 10 years, I've had my own business, and my company is called the Kaleidoscope Group. And we help people with disabilities to either find their dream jobs or to start their own businesses. And I am actually a very godly person too. I'm a Christian, very proud to be a Christian. So my faith is also deeply important to me.
Very interesting and diverse person. And I can't just wait to dive into your story, because when I first heard your story, I was absolutely bewitched. It was such an interesting story. So take us back to 2005, 2006. What were you doing? Where were you at in your life?
So let's call it the pre-Eshan world. My pre-Eshan world, because Eshan was born in November 2006, my pre-Eshan world was all about financial success. It was all about status. It was all about having fun. It was all about sort of living life materialistically. And in those days, and I say that now, Lynn, in a way that it sounds bad, those things sound bad, but actually most of us aspire for those sorts of things, right? We want nice things in life. We want to go on nice holidays. We want to enjoy ourselves. We want to create happy memories, but we tend to think that money is at the middle of those memories when you don't know better. And so I was a very ambitious individual. I come from a family that's made up of a lot of people that are very successful: doctors, accountants. My grandfather was a diplomat. So I was lucky enough to have a good education. So, I kind of ticked all those boxes, of sort of, well-educated, great jobs, worked in good companies. I worked for an incredible hedge fund called Gartmore for 13 years. I had 6 different roles there. And actually, back in 2006, to your question, I was sort of literally at the pinnacle of my career. So as far as I was concerned, I had everything going for me. I had a great family. I was married, lovely house, nice cars. My biggest decisions in those days was, what kind of initials am I going to put on my shirts and what cufflinks am I going to match to my watch? It's quite a ostentatious world, or am I going to get my car windows blacked out?
And also, you are about to become a dad, and that is a huge change for anyone. How are you feeling about becoming a parent?
I think like any parent, there's a sense of great excitement and a sense of nervousness at the same time. And I'd been going through some challenges with my ex-wife. So sort of, getting pregnant was one of those things that we hoped would help our relationship or help our marriage. And so yeah, there was a sense of excitement, definitely. There was also a sense of angst, and I think because I really enjoyed the life that I had, I didn't know how much that was going to change after having a child. And, you always hear from other people what it's going to be like, but you never really know until it happens to you directly, Lynn. I don't think anything can prepare somebody for being a parent until you actually are in those shoes and you realize what a sleepless night actually means and how it really feels.
Yeah, you are the perfect parent until you become a parent yourself.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. Very nicely said.
So Ishan is born. What happens?
So Eshan was born. We wanted a water birth at the time, and so I already started to get a little bit nervous because Yishan was not coming on time. And if you want to have a water birth, then you cannot be overdue or you shouldn't be overdue your date. So as the due date was coming along, we were thinking about, what can we do to accelerate the birth? We did acupuncture, we did reflexology. There were lots of different things people said you can do to induce labor more quickly. And then on the 14th day, over past his due date, Ishan decided to bless us and grace us. And, it was a night that I will never ever forget for the rest of my days, Lynn. It was in Barnet Hospital. um, my my ex-wife was sort of going through labor. She was being induced, and all of a sudden, this heartbeat that was sort of 120, 130 beats per minute suddenly dropped to 65. And sort of when you're tired, you're in that in and out of sleep phase. And I was in that in and out of sleep mode. And I heard that, and I suddenly sort of called the nurses, screamed. They came in, they checked as the heartbeat, has there was a tool that they were measuring the heartbeat with. Has that been dislodged? What's actually happened? And when they realized his heartbeat had dropped drastically, they took me to him for a crash cesarean. And that was when things started to go wrong. And I remember seeing a nurse that came out of the delivery room, and she was visibly shaken up. That was when I first knew things were wrong. And there was a nurse that said, "You're going to hear your son cry." And I never heard that cry. I really waited. I was pacing up and down the corridor. And at that particular point, I didn't have any family around me, so I was very, very nervous. And then I remember a nurse coming up to me a few hours later, and she said, "Look, I'm really sorry, but your son is very, very sick. We don't know if he's going to make it. He's going to be on a life support machine, and then we'll sort of, we'll just keep you up to date." And it was kind of, there's this a phrase I coined called the sound of silence. And I remember sort of being in the corridors of this really busy hospital, but the sound that I could hear was, when you hold a seashell to your ear, Lynn, and you
Yeah.
kind of hear that echo and that hollowness, okay?
Yes.
That was all I could hear. I couldn't hear anything else. I couldn't hear people. I couldn't see people. I was numb. And at that particular point, my mindset was, don't worry, whatever I'm going through, whatever is going to happen, we've got enough money. We're going to get Ishan the best care, and everything is going to be okay. That was my mindset. But I think I rapidly realized within 24 hours that money does not play a part in this kind of situation, And they once they'd explained to me what had happened, it was sort of, everything kind of sinking in, and you just beginning to think, okay, my wife is really sick. She'd obviously just had a crash cesarean. She was in a really bad position. Ishan at the point was in a very bad position, and it was really very, very bewildering. And when you spoke about who the Hardeep is, sort of pre-2006, religiously, I was a combination of sort of a Sikh and a Hindu. And my mum was they're called Brahma Kumaris, which is a form of Hinduism, I suppose. So I was a believer in God, but obviously when something like this happens, it really, really does shake you to the core and make you question everything that your life is about. But I would say in the first 24 hours, 48 hours, it was really petrifying experience, very lonely experience, a very surreal experience.
Today, we're hearing the story of Hardeep Rai, who went from being an investment banker to championing opportunities for disabled people. We left him just as he becomes a dad to Eshan, and he was beginning to understand that this wouldn't be a regular parenting journey. Let's hear what happened next.
What followed on from all of that?
Once Ishan had stabilized a little bit, we were told that Ishan would be on a life support machine for the next 7 days. And we as parents, would you believe, Lynn, would have the choice as to whether or not to keep the life support machine on or off. And the hospital advised us or steered us towards switching it off because they said he's going to be a vegetable all his life. He's not going to be able to do many things. And, they really, really kind of painted a very, very bleak picture. Now,
Did
I
it
would
actually
challenge,
use the word vegetable?
yeah, they did. They used the
Oh,
word
wow.
vegetable. They did.
Okay.
We didn't do that. We were never going to do that. And I suppose the days, the weeks, the months, as they transpired, it became a case of me sort of trying to come to terms with what had happened to Ishan, trying to come to terms, but at the same time being in disbelief. And at that point, my wife started going through a bit of a postnatal depression, and it became very difficult. We started to feel that people that were our friends were beginning to inadvertently alienate us. We weren't getting phone calls from people. Fewer and fewer people were coming over to the house. I mean, I'm excluding immediate family here. We were very fortunate. Our immediate families were amazing. But, when it came to extended families, when it came to friends, when it even came to work colleagues, they began to keep their distance from us. The funny thing with Ishan is he looked like a relatively normal, in inverted commas, baby for the first 3 months. You wouldn't actually know there was anything wrong with him. So there was this period of time where we thought, oh, he's going to be okay. It's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. But actually it became harder and harder. And I then became sort of more jaded when I went back to the workplace and I found out people were not treating me in the same way. I never forget going back into the workplace and finding no balloons, no cards, no cake, no congratulations, because people didn't actually know what to do, Lynn.
What made you leave your job and how did you come to Christianity?
So, two really good questions. So, my company at the time were doing in 2008, the financial crisis. Like most companies, Gartmore was going through a round of redundancies in order to safeguard the business. And we had the option of taking voluntary redundancy and getting a slightly better package or sort of taking the chance of being made redundant. And obviously, with everything that had happened with Ishan, it was a no-brainer for me to take voluntary redundancy so that I could spend time with him trying to figure out, what was going to happen going forward. And then with Christianity, actually, I got divorced, and a year or two after I was divorced, I met a lady, and she was an Indian Christian. And it's really funny, Lynn, because, I started going to a small Indian church, Christian church near my home, and I started interacting with lots of different people. And the first thing I found really beautiful about Christianity was just acceptance of who you are, where you are, what you are, just instantly, and that in itself was huge for me because up until the age of 36, sort of pre-Eshan, I had never really experienced challenges in my life before, not real challenges. I mean, my parents divorced when I was very young. I failed my exams before I passed them, so I went through those sorts of challenges, but nothing really that really tested me. Yet when Eshan was born, one of the things the Asian world started saying to me was that I was being punished. I had karmic accounts that I was clearing. I had been a bad person, and that's why I, became the father of a disabled child. Eshan was being punished from a previous life where he was a dishonest person. That's why he's become a disabled person now. I was facing some horrific judgment. And then what happened was, when I started to be introduced to the Christian church, I was surrounded by people that were really loving. They would see Shin in a wheelchair or his sort of pram that looks a bit like a wheelchair, and they would welcome him. They were warm to him. I'd listen to sermons and service, and I started reading the Bible by myself. And, I did get baptized. I got baptized in the water. But the real baptism happened for me a year or two later, in the spirit, when I was sort of in Regent's Park, and something really beautiful and really special happened, which I will never ever forget. And that was the moment that I became a real Christian, and I really turned. And ever since, I've never looked back. I felt very peaceful. I know the Lord is in control. I know every step of the way that I'm walking is preordained. It's in his will. I've learned to accept that even if things don't go according to plan, that's still his will. And that's a really difficult thing to do. Every single day we're challenged as Christians with situations that we're in that are before us that we don't like, or don't want to be in. But I suppose what I continue to learn to try and do is accept that I am in this position for a reason. Eshan is in this position for a reason, and that's what Christianity really helped me to do. It helped me to accept Eshan, accept myself, not be angry anymore, not be remorseful, not be regretful, and also, Lynn, not to really care about what other people say.
If you're enjoying Hardeep's story, you may be pleased to know that next week will feature part 2, where he talks about his company Kaleidoscope and how they can help disabled people. I'm sorry to say that we're just about out of time for today, but we'll be back next week. And don't forget, if you're blind or partially sighted and would like to learn more about any of the services provided by Torch, including ordering the NIV Braille Bible, the Torch Together holidays, our accessible books and resources, or our groups, our client services team would be very happy to speak with you. The number to call for information and for song requests is 01858 438 260. That's 01858 438 260. Or you could email info@torchtrust.org. You can also find us on social media. Just search for Torch Trust on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and YouTube. I'm sorry to say that we really are out of time now. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reflections. And until next week, from me, Marilyn and everyone on the Reflections team, goodbye and God bless.
You've been listening to Reflections from Torch Trust.